to Brilliant Biology. Today we're diving into topic 5C1, transfers between trophic levels. By the end of this video, you should be able to define food chain and trophic level, describe the different trophic levels, explain food webs, describe the different ecological pyramids, and calculate the losses along the food chain. Let's begin by looking at some definitions. First, we have food chain. This is a simple way of modeling the feeding relationship between organisms in an ecosystem. So basically, it's a diagram that shows us who is eating who. Then we have trophic level. This is a term that describes the position of an organism within a food chain or web. So for example, in this food chain, we have 4 trophic levels. We have the producers, the primary consumers, the secondary consumers, and the tertiary consumers. But we'll look into trophic levels in more detail. Now let's look at the different trophic levels. There's usually 5, and the first one is the producers. These are organisms that make their own food by photosynthesis or chemosynthesis, so we can think of plants or algae. And then we have the primary consumers. These are the organisms that eat the producers. Moving on, we have the secondary consumers, and these are the animals that eat the primary consumers. Then we have the tertiary consumers, and these are the animals that eat the secondary consumers. So they're usually top predators, and you can think of them as carnivores that eat other carnivores. The final trophic level in any relationship are the decomposers. And these are microorganisms like bacteria or fungi that break down the remains of animals and plants and return the mineral nutrients back into the soil. Now let's move on and look at food webs. The idea of a food chain is actually overly simplified because very few animals will only eat one kind of food. Like for example, giant pandas only eat bamboo. Most animals will actually eat a variety of things, and they will also be eaten by a variety of animals. And so the relationship becomes way more complicated, and this is where a food web comes in because we can see those more complex relationships. It's also important that you know that animals that are part of a more complex food web are less at risk of extinction because pandas, for example, if they run out of bamboo, they will completely starve. But an animal that has multiple sources of food will not be so susceptible to that risk. Next up, we have ecological pyramids, and they represent how energy is distributed across the different trophic levels in an ecosystem. The first kind of pyramid we have is a pyramid of numbers, so it will show the number of organisms at each trophic level. Then we have a pyramid of biomass, and it will show the biomass of the organisms at each trophic level. This is more accurate than the pyramid of numbers because, for example, with the pyramid of numbers, we can have one tree, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but if you actually take the mass, the height, the weight of that tree, you will see that it's actually way more significant. The bad thing about the pyramid of biomass is that it's very difficult to measure because you have to take a dry mass, because if you take a wet mass, that could change throughout the day. But then with a dry mass, you have to kill the organism to measure it. And so basically what you have to do is you have to take a sample of the dry mass to prevent destroying the entire ecosystem. And then with that sample, you can extrapolate and measure the entire ecosystem. The last kind of pyramid we have is a pyramid of energy. And this shows the total energy store of an organism at each trophic level. It's the most accurate way of representing an ecosystem because biomass only captures the ecosystem at a given time. The energy of an ecosystem will remain the same at each trophic level always. The only thing that changes is the different sizes of the energy stores. The only con with it is that it's very difficult to measure and it relies on an old model. Here we have a diagram comparing the different ecological pyramids. As you can see, if we have a simple ecosystem, all pyramids work just fine, but as the ecosystem gets more complex, the pyramid of energy is the most accurate. To finish off, let's look at loss of energy. Only a small amount of the chemical energy that is stored in a plant actually becomes part of the energy stored in an animal that eats it. Most of the energy is actually lost in feces and urine and in respiration. As you can see from this diagram, energy goes in that has been consumed and only 4% is actually laid down as new tissue. The rest is lost in respiration or in feces and urine. The process of making new animal biomass from plant material is actually called secondary production, and you have to know that for your exam. And that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. And if you enjoyed this and if this helped you at all, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.